Yo, welcome everyone to Weird Growth. I'm Cam from Ammo Marketing, and this is a podcast where we dig into the strange and unexpected stories behind how businesses grow. We have Chloë Constantinides on our podcast today, and I probably mispronounced her surname. Welcome, Chloë. Thank you so much.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you being here. So, look, you've got a really interesting and detailed and lots of twists and turns story. You've done so many different things. How would you describe what you do? Like, what's your job title?
I think the easiest way to wrap it up is to say an innovation consultant.
Yep.
And that crosses marketing, technology, design, and those sorts of fields.
Just all the things.
All the things.
Just a jack of all trades. And, you know, it must be really gratifying, really, you get to work on so many different projects and things. What are some of the things that you're working on right now?
So some of the major things are working with Curtin Accelerate. So that's their kind of Accelerate program for staff, students and researchers. And we get to work with startups across numerous fields, from bioplastics through to UAV battery tech, through to sort of health platforms for young teenage girls and that kind of stuff.
Amazing.
So really broad startups we get to work with, and we try and help them to commercialize their concepts. On the university train, there's also UWA's IQ Academy, and that's for uni students to basically get a feel for entrepreneurship and startups and how to go about generating ideas and coming up with ideas. So that's two big projects, I guess.
Yeah, huge.
And then I've got a bunch of clients. One is a platform for freelancer work management, so helping them with their sort of customer interviews, their design validation process, growth hacking kind of ideas for future when they're ready to launch. And other spaces in aviation and all sorts. So it is a very diverse and fun.
You're an abundantly productive lady.
Week.
Not a busy.
Try to be.
Yeah, but abundantly productive. So what would you say is the big problem that you solve for the clients and the organizations that you work for?
I consider myself a bit of a gap filler. So it's usually that people have someone who handles, I don't know, social media, for example. They might have someone who can develop code, but it's sort of tying it all together.
Yeah.
So it's looking at overarching strategy. It's like, what are you trying to do? Or people might have a concept and it's brilliant, but they've got no idea how to commercialize it and take it to the next level. So it's all about that, coming in and saying, what are the problems? And they're usually extraordinarily varied.
Yeah. So what do you enjoy about doing that? Why is that the path that you could do anything really? You're a clever person. You could do any career really in the world. What is it about that?
I think the diversity of it is really attractive to me. Like, it's exciting to get to constantly be stimulated by what I'm working on and no 2 days are ever the same. It also lets you use and exercise different skills and develop them, I guess. But also it's the reward of seeing something come to fruition or to be complete. I know you were talking about renovations in the office and that kind of stuff, and seeing something tangible at the end.
Yeah.
I really like that. So being able to see a finished product or a successful launch, or something that was hidden under wraps and in dark rooms that finally, sees the light and has customers. I think that's
and being part of that journey and being at the catalyst of it and seeing it actually come out and change the world is must be so gratifying.
Yeah, I don't know that I've changed the world yet, but one day hopefully.
So you've worked in technology and things for a long time. How did that start for you?
So I did a degree in advertising and marketing, and I was working at ad agencies, worked at the UN on a climate change campaign in New York, and then came back to Perth and worked in a marketing division for an R&D company, and we built electronics and electronic devices. And that kind of spurred this interest. I had to sit with engineers who talked super nerdy talk.
Yep.
And I was like, you have to learn. You're forced to learn.
Yeah.
And at the time we were building some software and some hardware, and I thought it would be really valuable to understand how to build software. And it also stemmed from a frustration of starting my own companies and having to pay someone else to make my website. And this was pre-Wix, Squarespace, like all the DIY platforms, which I would have used.
What were the companies that you started?
That one was an events company. And it was, something I ended up paying a company in Sydney, and it cost $6,000 to develop a website. And they didn't deliver the website in time.
Unbelievable.
And for events, it's critical. Exactly. Right. So that really was probably the pushing point where I was like, I need to learn how to do this myself.
Yeah. That's something that really grinds my gears, is very early stage, people who are out there having a punt and trying to, do something different.
Yeah.
And then these agencies who come along and, I don't want to say take advantage of them, but, it's just not fair. It's not equitable.
Yeah.
What goes on with some of those things. It's crazy.
It's crazy. And I mean, they had good intentions, but I ended up writing a pretend letter from a pretend lawyer and got my money back. But
that's the hustle right there.
I mean, I didn't get my website, so I think it was fair that I got my money back. But I put on my lawyer hat and pretended to.
So what do you think is the solution for founders who don't necessarily have the skills or the backgrounds? Founders are expected to do a little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm.
But, if they do need to build a website or run a digital campaign and they just don't have that skill set yet, what do you recommend that they do? Yeah.
I mean, learn as much as you can. So you're absolutely right. I think founders are, by financial limitations and just pure resourcing, you have to step up and you have to wear multiple hats and play different roles.
Yeah.
So I have found that the biggest asset when I've tried to start something is I want all the basic skills to be able to get something up and running without anyone's help. And it doesn't have to be polished and perfect,
right.
But if you just want to communicate your idea or your concept or get some early stage customers on board, if you can do that without paying a cent to anyone else, I think that's
spot on.
Really valuable.
There's this concept of the minimum viable product.
Yes.
From a software development point of view, there's definitely the same sort of thing for minimum viable marketing, right?
Exactly. And you can see it around places like you'll see logos that people have kind of done themselves, and they might look crappy, but get creative and experiment with it and see what happens.
They're right for where the stage of that business is now.
However, if you're really, really lacking and you're really terrible at something, I guess know when to reach out and know when to engage, someone, whether that's a friend or an agency or a,
there's a time and a place
freelancer.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So later in your career, you were involved in Dapper Apps.
Yes.
What was your role there?
So I was one of the co-founders.
Yep.
So we were previously at an ASX listed company. Shifted out of there. We wanted kind of different things. So we shifted out of there, got an investor on board. And then technically my title was COO. But being a startup and being a small team, was the legal person, the HR person, the creative director.
Bit of everything.
Yeah.
And you being from a marketing background, what sort of things did you see in that app development space that was really important to be involved in from a marketing point of view?
As in, like, what attracted me to apps?
Yeah, well, I mean, so the angle I'm taking here is a few years ago there was this sort of almost a bubble around app dev, and every man and his dog wanted to have an app.
Yep.
And something that also happened was people would go out and spend lots of money on building them and then launch them out to the market, and nothing happened.
Yeah, and with no marketing budget.
They spent it all on development.
Yeah.
Yep. What are some of the things that you saw in your role at Dapper, or just even working with other, people who are getting apps developed and founders in that way? What were some of the things that went well, and what were some of the things that didn't go so well?
I think you're right. Like, every man and his dog has an idea. Even still, you'll say to people, and they'll be like, "Oh, I've got this thing," and I think what I learned about apps is that, so we called it apps because that's the most common kind of terminology that people would A, Google,
Yep.
or B, like comprehend exactly what you're talking about. But for us, it was far more about integrated deep tech.
Yep.
And so yes, it might work with your mobile phone, but we were less focused on consumer facing,
Actually putting an app on the App Store.
yes, versus like internal business systems or operational tools that help, you know, resources companies to drill in the right direction, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it was that was the common term for it. I think 100% don't build something without testing the idea, start small. That classic stuff that you hear about of test what you can. If you can build it in an Excel spreadsheet, do it. If you can have some customer interviews first, do it. And do it in iterations. So we had fortnightly sprints. We would release the product, have them test, hopefully have them test with their customers as well. And then, or their team or their workplace, whatever it was, and then build and iterate from there.
Definitely sounds like you guys were one of the good guy app dev houses as opposed to
You
some
try
of the
to
stories
be.
you hear out there for sure. Yeah.
You try to be. I think people's mindset people still want fixed budget, fixed time. They don't want to hear, oh, spend 10 grand to work out if this is a bad idea. When in actual fact, you know, if that's what you spent to find out if something shouldn't go ahead, that's the best
possible
outcome.
spend of the money for sure. Yep.
Yeah, but I think that mindset still exists. It did 5 years ago, 6 years ago when I started in apps, and it's still very much, people still struggle to get past that pay to experiment and pay to test ideas, which is critical.
So I'm just spoilt for choice for other things to talk about with you. This is a thing. Kisanii.
Yep.
It's a online. It's a product that you've created yourself.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yep.
Tell us about Kisanii.
So this was kind of personal experiments to learn and to, I guess, learn marketing techniques and tools that I hadn't really had so much of an opportunity to do through previous clients.
Yeah. So e-commerce, is that?
Yep. E-commerce, lot of socially driven marketing. So it was really in the height-ish of Instagram influencers and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yep.
And I really wanted to understand how it all worked and these kind of cult products that got cult followings. And
so you're saying you wanted to know how it worked by actually going out there and starting a business to figure it out.
Yeah.
That's the startup founder mentality all over. You could have just read a bloody article, right?
I mean, you learn much faster. I think everything it's a cheap uni degree, right? Like, so it's...
Can't beat it.
Yeah, I looked at all the products that were sort of successful on social platforms, and that was health, fitness, children, pets.
Yep, lifestyle.
Weddings, lifestyle, that kind of stuff that's quite visual. And I prototyped a few things. I was looking at children's lunch boxes. I can't remember some of the other products I looked at, but it ended up going down the beauty line. And I think it was after buying a $70 single makeup brush for myself. And I was like, that's crazy. And naively, I didn't know. I'm not vegan or anything like that. I'm Greek, so I eat a lot of meat. But sorry, vegans.
There's nothing wrong with that.
But I was like, it's crap that people still use animal hair in brushes, and it's really common. And pretty much all the big brands do. So I was like, there needs to be a high quality, reasonable offering that doesn't use animal hair, and it didn't exist. So I designed it, I prototyped it, and then eventually got it to here, and then set up the shop, and
So it's still just ticking along more or less.
I run funny little campaigns and test ideas, and
still your little test bed for trying some stuff. That's
better
so cool.
I play with my own than someone else's.
Spot on. It's something that you do see a lot of advisors in this space who haven't necessarily got their own business or skin in the game and their real world experience. Right?
Yeah. And that space is constantly changing, as you know. So it's like if you don't stay on top of it and you're not practicing, then you'll lose your knowledge.
Got to keep your chops up.
Exactly, yeah.
Spot on. At the moment, you're working with Functionally as well, another Perth-based or founded startup, maybe not Perth-based anymore.
So Tim, the CEO, is based in Perth, but it's a global team. So they're a lot of them are in LA and New York, and Damien, the co-founders, in London. So the time zones are all over the shop. But
what's the elevator pitch for Functionally?
Functionally helps CEOs scale without breaking. So it's all about that wobble point when people grow to a point, over a couple of hundred employees, and the makeup of an organization really changes and things start to fall apart. CEOs lose visibility of what's happening. They only see things when they're on fire and not when they're kind of about to be on fire.
And there's this issue with the more as a team grows in numbers, the number of relationships increases exponentially too, right?
Exactly.
It becomes extremely complex very quickly.
Yeah. So it's a SaaS product that helps people to balance that, measure that on an ongoing basis, and it basically gets people working on the right things. It gets people on the same trajectory towards a shared vision. It's a really powerful tool for that. So
what are you doing for them?
I was doing like marketing growth, so I don't spend so much time with that anymore. Some fun stuff was for the SaaSta conference in San Jose, not San Francisco. So we had a big launch there in February last year. That was a lot of fun, and they've got that coming up again, so they'll be there. And
awesome.
Functionally kind of took over the entire conference, which I had a big part to play in that, which was really fun and exciting.
What happened there? How did you take over the entire conference?
So we're new.
I'm guessing you didn't have the budget to actually take over the entire conference.
We did a pretty good job.
Really?
it was quite fun, but we an Aussie startup, an Aussie SaaS product. The founders are well respected and well known, but we're still from Australia and still small in the scheme of the types of people that attend that kind of conference. So we wanted to make a splash, and Tim and Damien and the rest of the crew were very open-minded and good with experiments and good with saying like, let's give that a shot. And that ranged from us making your conference swag. And most people go for your t-shirts and pens and that kind of stuff. We were like, this is the US. What do the US love? Basketball. So we made custom bright pink basketballs with our logo on it.
No way.
Awesome. And handed those out. Some of the team were also going through Walmart and came across these llamas. And they were just
like soft teddy llamas.
Like stuffed llamas, and thought it would be funny to turn that into like our team mascot. So we put those in t-shirts. We ended up, I think we actually paid for a conference pass for the llama. And that was like this novelty thing that everyone at the conference was taking photos with it, sharing it on Twitter.
Awesome.
So I think, don't quote me on this, but if you ask anyone that was at SaaSta last year, I'm sure they will remember Functionally. Like
and that's your client base, really. Those people.
100%. Yeah, we wanted to work with the top, tech companies in the world, and that's where they all were. We had a whole bunch of other techniques for lead capture and all that kind of stuff.
So what other things were you doing just to introduce people to the concept outside of that?
We had tradition, as in outside of the conference. So we had, in-depth sales calls and demos.
Okay.
We had kind of clients working with us to develop the product. So, early stage customers that were using the product with the knowledge that we're still working on it and it's still going to improve. Fantastic tech team that just have the right approach to really listening to feedback, actively seeking feedback. We'd have frequent design sprints, frequent product testing and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So all of these things really are integral to the growth of the business as well. It's not just product and marketing. It's integrated. No. Yeah.
And I think that's something that I'm sure you see all the time as well now. It's like there's a very blurred line between what's product, what's marketing, what's CX, or like it's all kind of intertwined.
Yep.
And
you can't have one without the other.
Yeah.
Spot on. Yeah, cool. Okay, another Perth-based startup that you've been involved in is Rateit.
Mm-hmm.
What can you tell us about that?
So Rateit is a CX SaaS product. Is it SaaS? I don't know what you call it. So basically you would have seen some of those examples, smiley face apps.
Like on a tablet
tablets.
In a retail space.
Exactly,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. So they've got a lot of customers in Singapore predominantly.
Right.
So they've got Gardens by the Bay in Singapore. They've got, I'm not sure of the current list, but everything from Adidas to Calvin Klein to
big boy brands.
Yeah, and local companies like Pigeonhole and other ones like that. So yeah.
And so what does their customer journey look like? How do people first find out about them, and then what's the sort of steps that you take towards bringing them on as a customer?
Yeah, so most of their customers were retailers because it's an obvious fit for that kind of stuff. So often it was seeing it in another store, or there was a lot of outreach. So we did a lot of sales outreach and that kind of stuff, which can be
just cold calls or walking into a shop, or
email campaigns and that kind of stuff.
Okay, yep.
But once you've got a solid, brand list and customer base behind you, that obviously becomes a lot easier to convert.
Yep.
Obviously,
so it just kind of snowballs over time.
Yeah. But a lot of it was word of mouth, or
just seeing it in situ.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or people identifying that CX was one of the pillars of growth, or one of the areas that they need as an exec team, and they're like, how do we get insights into what's going on the ground?
Yep.
We had some great examples with Pandora, the jewelry store.
Right.
They had an issue that they couldn't understand why this particular shop was not selling or not, making the sort of numbers that they would expect.
One particular shop out of all the others. Right.
And it turned out from one little comment on one of these things was that someone said, it says that they have this stock, but there's never any stock there. Basically, there was an error in their stock system that suggested they had all these items there, but in reality, they weren't actually right in front of them. So customers would go in and consistently be disappointed that they'd go in and the stuff wasn't there. So little things like that, when you're talking growth, can just be
just ramming home the importance of getting that feedback loop and asking customers directly, what do you think?
Yeah. And how else do you get that kind of feedback? Because most people just walk out and they're not going to stop and tell the person in the store.
People hate confrontation and face-to-face interaction with other humans as a whole. You're right.
Yeah.
Amazing.
We had some interesting case studies from that. We did interviews with our retail customers, and there was talk about because a lot of the customers were in Asia, there was a lot of talk about the cultural differences that in Asia it's far less acceptable or common for people to give honest feedback. So they're far more likely to rate something higher and to say, oh, yes, it was good, less confrontational. Whereas you go somewhere like the US and they're very happy to give opinions and that kind of stuff. So it's that thinking about where you're based and how to structure feedback and how to structure questions in order to get honesty.
Super interesting.
As well.
It's a massive problem that polling companies have now as well, where all the polls leading up to an election are saying one thing and then the completely opposite thing happens.
Yeah.
Just asking people directly what they're going to do is different to their behavior. People say and do two different things these days.
Yeah.
And actually watching behavior and things are going to become more and more important, I think.
Mm-hmm. And then you have to design, as the people behind that, you have to then design those questions and those things accordingly. So
One big piece of advice that you would give to any new first-time founders looking to grow?
God. Just experiment
Yep.
is, as low cost as possible.
Yeah.
But the more, the more things you throw out there, the more likely something's going to stick. And record,
Yep.
like take down every piece of data you can. And then it's always there for you to pull back on.
This whole thing's a learning journey.
Yeah.
If you knew exactly what to do, we'd all be billionaires.
Yeah.
Because you'd just do those tasks and it will be done, and you build a business which everyone wants. But everything about this is about learning, right?
Yeah, exactly. And if I'm not big on that, like fail fast and that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
but experiment with
Sure.
the knowledge that some things will work and
Yeah.
some things won't, and you learn each time. So yeah.
That's awesome. Show and tell time, which we always do here at Weird Growth. Do you have a favorite tool or gadget or device or anything that you're using right now that you would recommend that other people try out?
It's like not growth related.
Yeah, that's good.
At all. But just as a fun kind of New Year thing, I've registered for a music production course.
Whoa.
And it's called Ableton Live, I think is the free version. And it's just a bit of a release from everything else, to be honest. It's just something fun to do. And you can digitally produce anything, or you can record real instruments, that kind of stuff. And
Sounds like fun.
I don't know if that's
No, that sounds excellent.
what you're after.
What's it
but
called again?
I think it's Ableton.
Ableton. Yeah, right.
I think there's it's called Live. There's a free lighter version of it.
We'll chuck a
So,
link in the podcast description.
Yeah.
That sounds sick.
Bit
Yeah.
of fun to play
Beautiful.
around with.
What's the future hold for you? What are your plan for 2020?
For 2020, okay, I was thinking like way further.
2030, if you like.
For 2020, I want to I've sort of been consulting and not really giving it a name. And I
Yep.
think I've had a chat with you about this,
Yeah.
I need to wrap it up into, call it something.
Yep.
There's a working title for that, but I'll hopefully release that soon.
Chloe's kaleidoscope of services.
That's a good one.
I was trying to think of a word to sum up like your career, and
Yeah.
some people say like it's a gig career or like a a bits portfolio career.
Yeah.
You might have a kaleidoscope career.
That's
so
good.
many
I like
things
it.
going on.
Sticking with the C's and the K's.
Yeah.
So that's the big thing. I've got a few kind of products of my own that I want to develop out and try, see what happens. Way down the track, I would love to be eventually the person I would hope to be in the financial position where I can find people that I think are just incredible and that I can invest in them. And that would be my ultimate kind of end goal to get to.
Angel investing.
Yeah.
Awesome. Chloe, thanks so much for your time here on Weird Growth today. Really appreciate you coming in here and sharing some of your wisdom. There's so many more things that we can talk about. I'd love to have you on again because, there's just a myriad of topics that we could get into. But for now, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
And that's all for Weird Growth. Goodbye.
Goodbye.